Well, the court in Tehran has issued guilty verdicts and indictments for 315 people arrested over anti-government demonstrations in Iran, with rallies pushing into their sixth week. This, as some Iranian officials claim progress is being made on a return to the 2015 nuclear deal. Simone Foxman has more from Doha. And Simone, what's the latest on the ground and on the diplomatic front?
Well, these indictments and guilty verdicts, essentially an intensification of the government crackdown on these protests. 4 of these 315 people charged with belligerence, and that's a charge that carries the possibility of penalties including limb amputation and death. So far, a Norwegian human rights group says some 215 people have been killed by security forces since these protests began, but that hasn't seemed to deter what we're seeing on the ground, which is a continuation of these protests. We've seen labor unions potentially joining this effort as well, calling for strikes at oil facilities, at schools, and at factories. That adding a bit of a new dimension to the protests, which were originally on the morality police and some of these ideological issues, seeming to move a little bit more broadly to economic issues. It's really interesting that we've heard these comments as well from Iranian officials suggesting that there's been progress made on the JCPOA, on this Iranian nuclear deal, potentially trying to put out the message that they could offer a carrot to the United States and Europe, some leverage on the deal if they just tone down their criticism of these protest response of Iran's alleged sales of drones to Ukraine. But what I'm hearing from sources on the other side is there's simply no progress, and the market shouldn't expect a return of Iranian crude anytime soon.
And Simone, we've learned that Australia's Chancellor will visit Abu Dhabi this week. What's on the agenda?
Yeah, 2 big issues for an Austrian delegation that also includes the finance minister and energy minister. One is the issue of OMV. This is Central Europe's largest fossil fuel company. It's about 1/3 owned by Austria, about 25% owned by Abu Dhabi, and it does publicly trade as well. This is the main conduit for Russian natural gas to come into Europe, but right now it's just receiving about 30% of contracted volumes. So the question here is going to be, where does this company go? Does it move away from E&P, and does it move potentially into chemical production? Also on the table, likely supplies of LNG. We saw Germany's Olaf Scholz go to the UAE and then come back with a pretty small contract for LNG supplies. Will Karl Nehammer, the Chancellor of Austria, be able to do that as well?
Let's stick with natural gas, Simone. The European benchmark has dropped below 100 euros per megawatt hour. Is this perhaps a sign that supply concerns are overblown?
Yeah, this was a real stunning and very notable move yesterday, but the end is not in sight for European supply concerns. And I'll show you this on the GTV Go, because we have essentially 1-month futures dropping below that 100 euro per megawatt hour mark. But if you look at 12-month futures, and those are in the blue on this GTV, they're still trading relatively elevated levels, 137 euros per megawatt hour, still higher than where they were in February and March. And this really indicative of what I've been hearing from the various energy CEOs that have come through Qatar, from the Qatar energy CEO as well, which is even if Europe has the best case scenario for this winter, if temperatures are warm, if its storage capacity meets the kind of needs that it's expecting, there's still going to be concern about these ongoing Russian supplies, because next winter is also a problem. The U.S. can produce as much natural gas as it wants, but it can't get it to Europe. Mideast capacity is pretty much maxed out. And so Europe's going to be looking for sources of natural gas next year, and we're not going to see a major new significant source of supply come to the market until 2024 at the earliest, Haas.